Hello and welcome into the Sporting Jacks Report along with Mauricio Ruiz. I'm Cole Pepper, and coming up here we'll have a closer look at the USL Super League. The Women's Professional League kicks off this summer. We have a lot of news to pass along. Plus we talk about the U.S. Women's National Team now under new management. But let's start with what Sporting Jacks was up to this past weekend. Mauricio, the Women's Champions League watch party was a great gathering of soccer fans as we went to Colhane's and saw some great soccer as well.
And what a game it was. Barcelona and Olympique de Lyon on the women's side has just grown globally so much the last couple of years, and two teams have really won the last 8 Champions Leagues, and star-studded on both sides of it. So to bring that game into our community, it's really what the USL Super League is going to do over time. So we're introducing it slowly at a time because not a lot of people are aware of the Women's Champions League just yet. So it's our job to bring that into the community.
We've talked about what a big focus it is for Sporting Jacks to unite and uplift the soccer community, and watch parties like that really a big reason why. And we invite you to join us for our Summer of Soccer watch parties on June the 1st. The next one, the Champions League final for the men, will be at both Island Wing locations to watch the biggest club championship in Europe. And then during the Copa America at the end of June, we'll be at Grace Note Brewing for 3 watch parties. We'll have prizes to give away and a chance for you to ask questions about Sporting Jacks. It's free to attend, but please RSVP by going to sportingjacks.com as we get things rolling here. It was a huge week for the USL Super League in terms of news. The First Division Women's League kicks off in August, and this past week the home openers for all 8 inaugural season teams were released. Let's take a look at the debuts and some of these matchups that we'll see in that first round. Not necessarily the first round, could be really over the first month of the season. One that really jumps out at me, Dallas Trinity opening play in the Cotton Bowl, which will be a big setting for a first ever home match.
Yeah, and I think a lot of teams are going to figuring out kind of what is a perfect setting for their teams, and based on location and access. I'm looking at those teams in the Southeast here, looking at Tampa Bay Suns, looking at Fort Lauderdale and Carolina Sen. Really teams that we're going to get to know quite well once we get play going.
Yeah, and of course then the question is how many teams will be added in the coming years. This is a growing league, and looking forward to the kickoff in August. It is now time for the Island Wing Company Game of the Week, and this week it's a matchup of one of the hottest teams in the league looking to go to the top of the standings. Let's go, Mauricio, as we take on the Game of the Week between New Mexico United and San Antonio FC. Here we go. New Mexico United in the dark kits. They came to this one having won 5 of the last 6. Despite that, they were still a -1 goal differential for the season. But watch this, San Antonio in white. 21st minute, you won't see a better ball than this. Kevon Lambert to Luke Hawkinson, the former Nashville midfielder, heads it in. What a start for San Antonio.
Yeah, and I don't know if that ball just kept going. Everyone thought it was going to go out of bounds, but you can see on the replay, even the defender kind of stumbles his feet a little bit and just caught the keeper off guard. He kind of got caught in that, in-between zone, but what a lovely header to be the goalkeeper.
Now 35th minute, New Mexico strikes back. Josu Landry puts it away. And we're level at 1, over 8,500 at Isotopes Park. Love it. Nice little finish there.
Boy, and Greg Hirsch, you can see the lovely footwork right before that, and just tapped it in for an easy goal for New Mexico.
And ahead to the first half stoppage time, Dayon Harris lays it off for Hirsch. And watch this rocket. Oh my. 2-1 United. What a strike here.
Yeah, the picture says a lot about it, but Greg Hirsch is having a great year so far. He's really the spiritual and the attacking leader of this team. It's one of the main reasons where New Mexico, as we're going to see here in a little bit, is on top of the standings right now. Unbelievable season he's having.
That made it 2-1 United. After that, New Mexico's defense was just too good. Look how well coordinated they are here. Even a shot off target took a lot of work from San Antonio. New Mexico United vaults into first place in the West with a goal differential now of 0 after a 2-1 win. Let's take a look at some of the other scores from around the league in the USL Championship. North Carolina, very impressive on the road with a 4-0 victory over Miami. That's one of the games that certainly has to jump out at you in this set here during Week 12.
Yeah, and two teams have been struggling early in the season, so for Carolina to get that victory, a really lopsided victory. But look at the top left of your screen, big upset there. El Paso versus Battery. Battery first place in the East, and El Paso really last place in the West. They've been struggling. What a great win for them.
Tough turnaround for Charleston after playing midweek in the U.S. Open Cup. We'll talk more about that in just a moment. Let's take a look at the standings through 12 weeks of the USL Championship season. And as we mentioned, New Mexico United goes to the top, a point ahead of Sacramento. Still unbeaten, but Sacramento's been loading up on the draws.
They really have, and they played Legion this past weekend, and they got a tie. And we've been seeing New Mexico slowly just kind of climbing up the charts there. And with the win that we just saw on our Game of the Week, they take first place with a game in hand still.
All right, let's go to the Eastern Conference now. As you see, Charleston Battery remains on top, but with Louisville sitting there now 4 points behind with 2 games in hand. I'll also point out Detroit City. They have, for a number of reasons, not played as many games as the rest of the conference. They really have an opportunity to close here in the next month or two.
Yeah, and I think they're just fine with where they are. They're sneaking in behind, just slowly kind of climbing up. And, and in the 11, we keep seeing it every week go from 6th to 5th to 4th, and now they're sitting in 3rd place.
Climbing the charts each and every week. All right, for more on Sporting Jacks and the USL, we invite you to subscribe to the Sporting Pod. Our weekly podcast takes you behind the scenes of what we're doing to build up to our first kickoff. Mauricio and I are joined by Tony Allegretti to discuss the hot topics in the soccer world and give the latest updates on Sporting Jacks. You can find the Sporting Pod on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. This week we discussed the quarterfinals in the U.S. Open Cup that saw 3 USL Championship teams advance. I asked the question, which USL team will last longer this year?
Go with New Mexico United. I've enjoyed watching them in the league. They're creeping up. They actually have a game in hand. They're about to claim first place if they can only win this next weekend. I just think that they're flying high, a lot of confidence, and they actually have the attacking power to take down a really well-structured MLS team if that's what they face. Or I think some of the other teams in the USL sometimes, and that's just true too.
So Mauricio's thoughts on it. I won't get you to go too much more into detail on who you're picking, but we have learned quite a bit in the U.S. Open Cup here. What is it that you've learned about where the USL Championship is in terms of the quality of soccer they're playing compared to MLS?
Yeah, the teams that have been able to make a run will continue to make a run. You look at their top end on the USL roster, and you look at kind of the middle to the bottom end of MLS, there's a lot of parity there, right? Obviously, the MLS have the ability to bring in those DP, those designated players that they're paying them millions and millions of dollars. They make a huge difference. So in the middle to early rounds of the U.S. Open Cup, they tend to rest those players. And those players are typically the ones that make a difference when the game is really tight and unlocked. So second half when the game is 0-0, they do open up those, they do bring those players off the bench to make a difference. But really between the top level of the USL Championship and the middle roster of the MLS, there isn't that much of a difference.
Yeah, and we've seen that to play out. We'll see if there's a USL Championship team that makes it all the way to the finals and perhaps wins the U.S. Open Cup this year. When we come back, Becky Burleigh joins us to look ahead to the women's national team and their upcoming debut under new head coach Emma Hayes. And we invite you to become a member of Sporting Jacks. Membership is absolutely free. Go to sportingjacks.com to sign up. You'll get merchandise discounts, VIP event invitations, and chances to win prizes and experiences. Plus, you can also put down your season ticket deposit. Just go to sportingjacks.com to become a member. More to come on the Sporting Jacks Report right after this. All the USL Championship games are streamed nationally on either ESPN Plus or CBS's Golazo Network, and the next national broadcast comes on CBS Sports Network Wednesday, June the 5th. It's the battle for Texas as San Antonio hosts El Paso Locomotive Wednesday night, June the 5th, 9 o'clock on CBS Sports Network. And now let's turn our attention as we welcome in Becky Burleigh to join us here for this conversation. Let's start with the Women's Champions League final, Becky. What were your big takeaways from the match we talked about earlier?
First of all, that was an all-star game. I mean, some of the play in that game and some of the personalities who kind of emerged. I mean, what a game, what a crowd. It was almost 51,000 people witnessed that. I mean, that's just exciting for the sport.
Becky, Emma Hayes, new women's national team coach, has announced her first training roster for the women's national team leading up to the Olympics. What did her player selection tell you about her approach?
Well, interestingly, Lindsey Horan just comes off that game that we were just discussing. So will she be someone who plays in right away, or do they give her a little bit of downtime because of that? And these friendlies are, right around the corner next week. And so I think that when you look at this roster, what's so interesting to me is it's really easy to pick out some of the people who have just been, kind of the spine of this team. And there are still relatively young players or some veterans, but the spine, they've got a lot of experience. And then she's brought in some people who have less experience, but are emerging stars. And so I think it'll be very fascinating to watch how these all play out, because really it's it's first impression time. Not that Emma isn't aware of all of these players on their own stages, but like when you're in front of the coach in the national team environment, that's a whole different deal. And so I think this camp will have everyone's attention for sure.
Couple of international friendlies coming up against South Korea. So what are you going to be looking for out of these first matches under Emma's guidance?
Emma talks about identity, and I think we'll start to see that form. And there's no doubt that, Twyla was part of creating that identity in the interim role, and Twyla is staying on the staff, so that will carry over. But again, like when the head coach is there and she's talking about, her teams always play with fire, but she's also talking about her teams want to have the ball and want to control the game. But where do they want to control the game? What parts of the field and how they do that? I think that's going to be fascinating.
Now, the USL Super League finally announced the home openers for the inaugural season. That's going to be kicking off in August. And now that the games are known, how does it all impact the coach's approach as they put together their team?
Well, it makes it feel really real, like it is there now. I think when you see who you're playing, I think that's interesting. And some of them are going to be like, travel logistics. So, for example, if Dallas is playing Spokane in the opener, how does that factor into, your lead up into that game with the travel involved? But more importantly, I just think it comes down to it makes it feel like it is real. It is now time, go time. And putting together those rosters becomes more and more important because it's a pretty short lead up. You get going and then you're playing. And I think that's great in some ways because it'll give you a chance to sort of, maybe build the plane while you're flying it. But at the same time, if you're a coach, there's a little bit of a scariness to that part because clearly there's results that count and you're just getting into it and just learning out your schedule and all that.
More news on the USL Super League front. We learned that WNBA rookie and former LSU star Angel Reese has joined the ownership team for DC Power. That's quite an addition of a rising star in women's basketball.
So cool to see women investing in women. And we've seen that, in a lot of different areas in sports other than soccer too. But to have Angel, who's, from that DMV area, invest in her hometown team and be someone who, as young as she is, interested in that side of the sport. I think that really gives us a preview as to how all women's sports is getting elevated over and over again. And this is no different. I mean, I'm excited for her to join the ownership group.
We are seeing a whole lot of big-time sports celebrities, for lack of a better term, investing in soccer now, Mauricio. Tim Weah, U.S. men's national team star, investing in Brooklyn FC. That just announced here this week. We're seeing more and more of this. It matters to these top players to support the sport that they love. And even sometimes it's from other sports. Patrick Mahomes has ownership, and Aaron Rodgers has ownership in some soccer teams. We're seeing a lot of this around the country.
Well, there are a lot of smart people out there that are just finally starting to come to the table. And there's a timing matter, too, as well, right? We talk about so much soccer coming to the U.S. in the next few years. When the World Cup is going to be here in 2026, it's not news anymore. Maybe in 94 when it was here, in 96 with the women, 99 with the women, it was almost like, oh, the World Cup is here now. People are leading up to it. So the opportunities for investment, smart people with money, and really the support for women's sports, I think is probably the biggest boom that we're seeing worldwide. But here in the U.S., we have the history of having great women's soccer, and it's not a secret. So get people on board, investing in it. I think you're going to see this soccer thing that Americans have been waiting for a long time. I think someone says is the next best thing since 1990, right? It's about to get here.
Yeah, and it continues to grow, and it will with the USL Championship. You mentioned the World Cup, of course, in between then, Copa America, all these other big tournaments that are going to be played and leagues that are going to be launching really does make a tremendous next 18 months when you talk about the game here in the United States. It's not too early to become a season ticket member of Sporting Jacks. Just go to sportingjacks.com and put your deposits down. $25 reserves your space for the men or the women, and if you want to reserve both, just $40. Just go to sportingjacks.com to save your seat for pro soccer in Jacksonville. Coming up, building the foundation for the future, how the USL handles youth soccer and the impact it can make on the future of Sporting Jacks. We hear from the head of youth soccer in the USL next as the Sporting Jacks report continues. Sporting Jacks will be unveiling the official kit in the months to come, but you can already get your official Sporting Jacks merchandise from t-shirts and hats. the sweatshirts, and of course the scarf. Find Sporting Jacks official merchandise at sportingjacks.com, at our official team store on Phillips Highway, and at We Got Soccer. One of the key goals for Sporting Jacks is to grow the game in Jacksonville, and part of that is developing young soccer players, but it's also about introducing the game to kids and families. I spoke with Joel Nash, the Senior Vice President of Youth and Pre-Professional for the USL, and one of the points he made to me was that even if young kids don't go on to become professional soccer players, developing the love for the game is perhaps an even bigger goal of the academy system.
Foremost, we want the young player to love the sport, to continue that love for the sport, even if they also continue to grow and excel in their skills and their ability, where perhaps the desire to go pro, the desire to play in college are obviously there, but the ability to perhaps compete at an elite level and even perhaps obviously go professional, that obviously comes with key milestones and key moments. But I think from the very onset, in my world, we have a platform or league called USL Youth, which is more for the engagement of the youth player to enjoy the sport within the ecosystem of USL with our member clubs. But then as you lead more into the platform of USL Academy, that is ultimately where these players, both boy and girl, are earmarked by skilled coaches and talent identifiers to say this player has a real opportunity to perhaps have a professional career. And then you move into the highest level of pre-professional soccer in our country, which is League Two on the men's side, W League on the women's side. And this is for the highest level amateur talent, whether they're pre-college in high school, they're in college, or perhaps just graduating college. They want to play in those platforms to then move into a League One or obviously championship with Sporting Jacks coming in the future, and Super League, which obviously the club's coming in as well. So those pathways, I call them water breaks in some ways, right? You want to continue to move to the next rung as your talent allows, but none of that should ever come in lieu of developing that desire to just love the sport and stay with the sport, because most athletes won't go pro, and we want them to come back and be involved in the sport.
Mauricio, Joel, there's talking about things from the league level, but same kind of approach from the club level?
Oh, absolutely, right. We want to create fans. We know that there's a ceiling to becoming a professional athlete. We all have that dream at some point, but it does have a ceiling to it. So how do you create an environment that creates soccer fans and eventually soccer supporters and contributors and investors and owners? So you kind of create that, the entire ecosystem. So we have an entire entity. And saying, oh, I stopped playing soccer in high school, or I didn't go to college, or I didn't make it pro, it's no longer a bad thing. It's okay. We have a ceiling on the playing side, on the surface, but you can still be involved at a high level in the game. Yeah,
it's something we see in other sports too, and seeing it more and more in soccer as the days go on. We are proud to announce our new radio show. The Sporting Jacks Soccer Hour debuts on Monday, this coming Monday, June the 3rd at 6 p.m. on 1010XL. Mauricio, Becky, and I will cover the world of soccer, including the U.S. men's and women's national teams, the USL Championship and Super League, Sporting Jacks, the Premier League, and more. Join us starting June the 3rd on 1010XL. Stick around, there's more of the Sporting Jacks Report coming up straight ahead. You can watch the Sporting Jacks Report every Wednesday at noon on ABC 25, with re-airings on Saturdays on ABC 25 and on demand on First Coast News Plus. Mauricio, this is the summertime. School's getting out. A lot of folks getting their vacations planned. I'm just thinking it's a great opportunity this summer to go see some USL Championship action somewhere.
Well, as we mentioned, it's the summer of soccer. There's a lot of soccer going on. The USL Championship goes through the summer. So if you're in a town, just Google it. Is there a USL Championship team here? And go see a game, because it's a great venue.
Really is. All right. We also invite you to follow Sporting Jacks on our social media channels. You can see the handles there. It's a great way to stay connected to what the club is doing as we move forward. Again, we invite everybody to come out and join us for our watch parties. For the Champions League, we'll be at both Island Wing locations, and then Copa America will be at Grace Note Brewing. Should be a great continued summer of soccer. For Mauricio Ruiz, I'm Cole Pepper. Thanks so much for watching the Sporting Jacks Report. We'll see you next week.